All right, great. Heath, thanks a lot for having me back. And I'm really excited to be here today because I've had so much fun learning the new Topaz Studio interface. And I'm going to go over some of this a little bit. Maybe it's stuff that you've heard before, but it's been confusing for me. So I just want to try and clarify for everyone. The Topaz Studio that we're looking at right here is Topaz's new interface that is a free photo editor. And when you purchase this, it comes with certain things that are already there that allow you to do some basic editing without any additional purchases. It also, if you have purchased Topaz products in the past, like I'm going to go up here to the very top. I'm going to open the plugins. If you've purchased any of the Topaz plugins that you see here in the past, those all still work within the, you can call them up from within the Topaz Studio. So what this is an interface that allows you to do your work without having to use a paid host like Photoshop or Lightroom. And so it's just a very intuitive interface, I find, and allows for a lot of things. Now, also in the process of these updates that they've done with the studio, they're also doing some improvements to some of the fundamental plugins that are here. So for example, Topaz Clarity, which has been one of my favorites for a long time. It's just an amazing tool. They've improved it even further, and they've made it so that we don't have to call it up as a plugin anymore. It actually exists within the Topaz Studio interface, which is really cool. And they have plans for bringing some of these additional plugins into the Topaz Studio workspace as well. So there's a lot of change going on there. These guys have been working really hard to create these tools and to improve the ones that they've already had, and it's been really fun. So with that said, I'm gonna be talking a little bit about the interface itself as I go through some of these things. So right now, what we're looking at is the Topaz Studio interface. Over here on the left, we have the effects panel, and the effects are the things. These are like presets that you can apply by clicking on them to any of these to any of the images that you have in there. Now, you can also click here, and you've got all these different styles that you can call up. They're organized by category. And they also have a place where if you create your own effects, you can save them and you can see them in here. So these are all some that I've created and named myself. So the effects panel is here for you to use. And oftentimes, I mean, I use it occasionally as a starting point. So once I select a preset over here, over on the right in the adjustments panel, you see all the adjustments that were brought into play to create this particular look. So once you do that, you can always go back into these presets and tweak them and adjust them to use this as a starting point and then take it in and customize it for your own artistic preferences. So really powerful and cool. Now, also what you're seeing over here, not only are these some of the presets that come with the Topaz Studio interface, when you create your own effect, you have the option to save it as a public, to be seen by the public or by just you. If you save it as a public effect, it shows up out here. So you're not only seeing the ones that the Topaz team has created, but you're seeing ones that any other user has made public. So there's all kinds of different things that you might find to apply to your images.
Yep. It's worth mentioning right here that you are in your effects. So these are all effects that you've created. I don't think any of these are shared right now, but there are,
The My Effects.
yeah, there are hundreds of effects in each of these styles and personal ones that you've used and all of that.
So, but Heath, if I go like right now, I've gone to basic. Um, these are the ones that came with Studio, and are not these some of the ones that are public as well?
Yeah, they are. The way that works is we used to have a local and community separation. And if you clicked on local in things like Impression 2, Glow 2, Texture Effects 2, you would see only the effects that are on your machine. If you went to the community, you'd see everything that was created by users. We've merged those two, and as you can see right here, they're sorted apart from the basic workflow, which is just an empty adjustment that gives you a couple adjustments to start with. Every other adjustment you see is sorted by likes. We're adding some additional sorting mechanisms, but right now you're going to see the most popular or most liked adjustments from the top down. So these include ones that we've created by Topaz, also ones that were created by other users who chose to share them. So that's all integrated together.
Okay, great. And so that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed about this. Then the other thing then, over here where we have the adjustments panel, there are several ways that you can get to the adjustment. So one of those ways is to go up to the top bar up here, and you see where it says adjustments, and you can click here. And these are the ones that come with the basic Topaz Studio. The ones that are down here are part of the adjustment pack that you do purchase, and you can purchase these independently or as a package and get them all at once. So you can access those through right through this interface right here. If you haven't purchased them, they won't show up as active in this list. The other place you can access that is over here in the adjustment panel. You've got this adjustments button, and you can click here, and you notice it's the same list of items here, just in another more convenient location. So you can kind of access them in a couple of the different ways. So I guess what I'm going to do is just jump right in here and start processing a little bit and show you some of how I'm using it. And the adjustments that I'm going to use most today are the basic adjustment, and then also Topaz Clarity. For those of you who have used Clarity in the past, you know it has to do with adjusting the contrast in the image and the tone at very specific and discrete levels within the image. What Topaz Labs has done is take the Clarity program that we used to go out to here as a plug-in to get, and it is now resident within this within the Topaz Lab. So if I go over here and click on this stack, there is an item down here called Clarity, and when I click on that, there are a host of different presets here. And most of them, if you look over, once you select a preset and then you come over here, you'll notice that most of them are comprised of two adjustments: the precision contrast adjustment and the HSL color tuning adjustment. Those two adjustments combined constitute Topaz Clarity within Studio. And these two adjustments are phenomenal in what they allow you to do. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to reset this. So I've removed all the adjustments, and I'm back to my my plain image here. That's interesting, that little corner there going on. I don't know where that came from. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go over here and do a basic adjustment to this. Now, this is a raw file. That's the other thing that's great about Topaz Labs now. You can drag your raw files in here and work with them. So I'm going to go into do a basic adjustment right here. And I'm going to make sure that I'm looking at my histogram in the top. And this is a little different than I've done things before with working with raw files. But what I typically try and do is start by moving my shadows I'm trying to bring my histogram over closer on the left without, you see where it starts to climb up the side there and kind of clip? I want to get right to there, but not beyond that. On the right side, I'm going to take the highlights and move to the right and expand out. Now, if I go too far, I don't want to go up the side there. So now I've adjusted those two parameters, and now I can begin to play around with my exposure and clarity. So, and also my saturation. So the other thing I'm going to do here is go down and pump the saturation just a little bit here. And I'm going to go into my clarity and bring that up a little bit as well. And I can also play with my exposure, and I can bring that up and brighten that just a little bit. So now here's our before and here's our after, and all we've done are just a very few minor things within a basic adjustment. So that's where I'm going to start with this. The next place I'm going to go is to our clarity setup, which is, again, it's the precision contrast combined with HSL color tuning. And I'm going to start with precision contrast. I'm going to click on that, and you notice we've got a whole bunch of different things we can deal with here. Now I'm looking at a histogram up at the top, and it's a color histogram. And I'm going to show you something. This is something that I picked up from one of the Topaz tutorials, which are great, by the way. I encourage you to go explore those on YouTube, and Heath does a bunch, as well as other people there. But one of the things that I saw done with this, it's really helped me. I take the color right here and I drop it all the way down, and so I turn this into a black and white image. And what this does is allow me to work just with the tones and not have to worry about the colors that are happening, which is really kind of a good way to start, I think. So I'm going to start by, again, I'm watching my histogram here. How do I get this thing out of the way? I'm watching my histogram here, and I'm going to go down to my shadows, and I'm just going to move my shadows down a little bit here, and my midtones. And again, I'm watching that histogram. I'm not even looking at my image. I'm watching the histogram to bring it over here to the left as much as possible. And then my highlights as well, I can move those up, and I'm trying to move that over to the right without getting too close over here and climbing up that side and clipping. So right there, I've already just made a few adjustments, and now I'm going to bring my color back to this. So I'm going to go down to saturation, and just a little tip here: when you want to zero back into your saturation and have it reset, all you have to do is click once on the word and watch. When I click, boom, it just zeroes out right away. You can always slide it, but it's just a quick shortcut. So now you can see here's our image with some of those, the shadow and lighting adjusted for, and here's our before and here's our after. Now I'm going to go in and make some micro adjustments here to see, and now I am watching the image to see how things are looking. And so I'm trying to bring out the detail in that foreground and a little bit more. So now there's our before and there's our after. I might go back into my basic adjustment at this point and just lift my exposure a tiny bit. Whoops, too much. And bring that up a little brighter down there. So go ahead and close that. So now the next thing I'm going to do, remember the clarity is that combination of precision contrast and HSL color tuning. So I'm going to go into the HSL color tuning, and this is really a powerful tool. So right now we're looking at everything it's global adjustments. So if I adjust saturation here, it's saturating the whole image. Everything in there is being saturated when I move that slider. And you can tell it's called overall saturation, lightness, and hue. And that's this button right here. But as I scroll over these other buttons, I can actually isolate the red or the gold or the yellow and adjust those for color as well. So let's go here with the, I'm going to go to the red, and I'm going to tap on that. And when I do, notice everything changed down here to red hue, red saturation, and red lightness. Well, the hue is, I could change the hue, but the hue is giving you a whole different tone. So, you know, we're going from like red to green or whatever. I don't really want to change my hue. I'm happy with the hue that we have here. What I want to work on is bringing out these reds in the grasses and maybe the roof a little bit. So what I'm going to do is come down and I'm going to saturate that red just a little bit. Now, one thing is I encourage you to slide them all the way up. So that's all the way 100% saturation, which you can tell is too much. The red is too bright, but it gives you an idea of what's being affected when you slide that slider. So I'm going to bring that in maybe to about, I don't know, about right there. And then the other thing you can do is brighten the red, or raise the lightness on it. So if I raise it all the way up, look how white or light they got. Again, way too light, but it gives you an idea of what's being affected. The roof in this, and these flowers on the fence, and then the red flowers here. So now I'm going to bring that down a little bit. I want to have a little bit of brightness to them because I really am trying to pull those out. So that's looking pretty good to me. Now I'm going to go over to the gold, and you can tell when you hover over these, it's hard to see on the screen, but you see the red hash marks now that are on the screen. So I'm going to move off and they disappear. But when I hover back over the square, the hash marks come back up, and that's showing you where the color is going, that you're going to affect actually is in the image. So I'm going to click on that, and we've now changed to orange saturation and lightness. So now if I take this saturation all the way up, you can see, look at all the areas that are being affected by that. Now clearly too much, but I'm going to back that off, and I can now begin to really control this hue and this foreground stone and all of this stuff really, really nicely. Then I can take my brightness if I want and increase that a little bit, and I might increase that a little more. So now we've got our yellows coming out really nice, and the reds are popping out of that green. Now we can go to the next area here, and this is going to be our yellow. Same thing, if we bump this all the way up, we can see how it's kind of affecting the grasses and so on. I'm going to back it down a little bit and find that sweet spot that gives me the color and the tone that I'm looking for, and I might brighten it up again just a little bit. I'm going to go next to the green and so on. You can go through each of these and find the colors that are being affected. So this one, the aqua, let's see, is it this one? Let's see, there, the blue. So the blue is really going to affect our sky. So I'm going to increase my saturation. Again, I'm going to take it way up, and you can see how I can oversaturate, but I'm going to bring it back down, and I'm going to find a place in there that really just very subtly increases that color and really brings the sky out a little. And I'm going to increase our brightness just a tiny bit, and maybe just a little more saturation there. So there's our before, look how drab, and there's our after. So we're now at the point where I'm ready to be okay with this. Now the other thing you can do, I'm going to zoom in a little bit, you can also affect your details a little bit, and when you do this, sometimes you start to add a little bit of noise, so you can suppress those artifacts a little bit. And there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and close that out, or not close it out, but close it up, and we've made those changes. Now, as I look at this image, you notice that there is a person in there that when I first started working with this, I didn't know was there. But here's the other thing that you can do with Topaz Studio. You have a healing brush. I'm going to tap on that and come over to my healing brush here. I'm going to increase the size of this so I can really see that area. And then I can take and slide my healing brush down so that it's small. And I'm going to go in here and paint this person out of here. Now, for something like this, it's not the most accurate, but it's probably good enough, and it's at a place where it's not going to be seen, and we're going to make this a painterly image anyway, so that little bit of detail isn't going to hurt anything. Once you get that done, you go ahead and click your done button up here, and now you have made that change. Now the other thing I'm noticing, I've got a little bit of a shadow in my corners, so I may want to crop that out. So I'm going to go and select the crop icon, and the first thing you want to do over here is lock down your aspect ratio. It starts in at unconstrained, but we want it to be original so we don't blow our aspect ratio. And we're just going to bring it down just a tiny bit to get rid of that shadow in the corners. I probably could have used the healing brush for that, but it's just as easy to do this. And we've got rid of it. Now I'm also noticing, do you see this spot right here? It's very subtle, but I can see it. So I'm going to go back into my healing brush and drop that down and come over here. It looks like a dust spot or something on my sensor or my lens. So there, now I've got that taken care of. So those kinds of little cleanups things are great. The other thing that you can do in here, while you're using this crop tool, you have the option to level your horizon. So let's say we were working with this image and it was crooked. Well, you can come over here to where you have your angle setting, and you can slide this and level your horizon. So you have a lot of utility in this little device. I'm going to cancel that because our horizon is just fine. So now we have we've done our basic adjustment, and then we've done our clarity, which is a combination of precision and color tuning, and it's looking pretty good. But what I want to do with this is turn it into a painting. So what I'm going to do is use one of the plugins. So I'm going to go up here to my plugins, and I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to use Impression 2. And for those of you who have impressions from the past, you'll recognize that it's the the tool that has all the painterly looks, and it mimics, you know, Degas and Cezanne and some others. So here we go. It pops right in, and it's going to apply whatever was set up last. And I'm going to click this little caret here and come back out. These are all our, not all of them, but these are many of our presets that are available within the impression tool. And just like in the presets in Topaz Studio, you have a little pick list, and you can go down and look at all the different categories. And we're in painting right now because I wanted to use a painterly look with that. So I'm going to start just exploring some of these and find one that I like. And I think I'm going to go with this one right here. That's the Degas Dancers. Let's look at Degas Dancers 2. Yeah, I actually like Degas Dancers 2 better. So I'm going to go with that. So once you pick your preset here, you can then click on the sliders, and those, it'll allow you then to go in and make your adjustments to this image. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and I come in, and I've got all these different things that I can do now with my image, and I can adjust the stroke, the color, lighting, texture, and I can even mask if I want, which we probably won't get into today. But for the stroke, I'm going to go in here. You've got all these different brush styles, and you can select different brush styles, and as you do, you see how the changes are represented on the screen. So you go in and you find the brush style that you're looking for. You can also adjust the number of strokes that you have in your painting, so you can go low and have fewer strokes, so it's much bolder, or you can go very high and have less strokes, and then it becomes, to me, it looks more like a photo from a distance, and then when you get closer, you can see that it's painting. You can adjust the opacity with your paint volume and also the actual opacity of the paint. If you drop down, sometimes you'll start to see these little white specks that are appearing. What that means is we haven't covered the canvas, and that's the canvas showing up behind the paint. We haven't covered the canvas with enough paint. So we're going to increase that opacity a little bit, and we can then fill our canvas. We can also do that by increasing our brush size a little bit. You have a lot of other variables that you can play with here, and I'll encourage you to do that. I'm not going to go into a whole lot more, but you can see how this can work for you. The next thing, I'm going to close this, collapse this, and color, you'll recognize these same color adjustments that we had in the HSL adjustment panel, and I'm not going to do anything here. We've really already adjusted our color the way we want it. But what I am going to do is go to lighting, because I want to do a vignette on this, just around the edges. So the first thing I'm going to do is come down here. I'm going to increase the size of the vignette, and you can see it just pretty much blacked out the whole thing. Back it off a little bit more here, and I'm going to take my transition and drop it all the way down, because I want to see where my edge is. So now I can see what my vignette looks like. I can also adjust the roundness of it. I want it to be, in this case, a little bit more of a square vignette. So once I get all of those, then I can back this off. I want to expand it out and have a little bit smaller vignette. A little lag there, okay. And then once I get it where I want it, I'm going to go and adjust my transition, because I don't want this harsh edge here. I want it to be really faded into black. So I'm going to raise this transition up, kind of watch as it goes, and I'm starting to pull that out. And then I want it to be almost not noticeable. I don't want to see it as a vignette. I just want it to be very subtle around my edges. And that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and move on down to the next item. So let me collapse lighting. Our next item is texture. And if you look at this, I'm going to zoom way in. You can see the canvas texture that's been chosen for this. So when you're working to create a painting-like look, you can actually even intensify to make it look like a canvas. You have all these different canvas choices here. There's canvas 2. We'll switch to that. Canvas 3. But then in addition to selecting a type of canvas that you want, you can also adjust the strength of that canvas and make it much stronger if you wish, and you can make it much larger. So you have lots of flexibility. I'm going to keep it subtle, so I'm going to back it down considerably, and I'm probably going to leave it about right there. I'm looking at my vignette. I'm going to go back here. It's a little bit still too big for me. I'm going to back it off a little more, and that's even better. So it's even more subtle. So that's really everything I want to do there. I'm going to go ahead and close my texture up. So now we've made the changes that we want. There's our before and there's our after. I'm going to go and say OK. And it's going to pop us right back into Topaz Studio. Now, you'll notice here's our image and we have no adjustments over here. So what Topaz Studio has done when it brings it back in from impression, it's actually flattening the image. So now everything has become, it's a flattened image with all those adjustments in it. We can continue to work with that if we want. So I'm going to go in and do one more thing here. I am going to go down, and one of the things that I like to play with a little bit sometimes is adding a little bit of radiance. So when we do this, radiance can be really overdone. And I'll show you what I mean. So if I take my slider and move my radiance up, this is where you get this kind of electrified kind of look. But what I like to do is keep it down to very low, like maybe even 3. And if you can't use the adjustment slider by just dragging it, you can go over here and start typing in. I'm going to put in 0, 3, and see if I can get that. So that's given me a little bit of that look that I'm looking for. It kind of softens everything. You can play around with the width and length and curl of that radiance line, if you will. But I kind of like that that look to it. That is kind of where I would stop. I'm really happy with that now. I might have I could have done some things to bring the color out a little more. In fact, we could even go in and add another basic adjustment here. And if I want, I could saturate the image just a little bit in that way. And there's our before and there's our after. Now what we're seeing is before we came back into Topaz Studio. So the before is when this is with the impression changes applied. That's pretty much where I would stop with this one. Now, one of the things that I wanted to show you that's really fun for me, a while back, I purchased a logo for myself. You've probably all seen them out on the internet, on Facebook, where people have now had their logo created. There is a company called Photo Logo, and they do, I think, an excellent job with these, and they'll create your logo, a very professional looking logo for your photography. And they'll send you these files that have, in my case, I have a black one and a white one. They're PNG files, and they're high res in this case. And they're used, I can use them to lay them on my images. So here's what's cool about this. Topaz Studio makes this so easy. All I did was import these files by dragging them into the screen, and I have them both, my white and my black one. And now I want to add my signature to this image. I'm going to grab this and drag it over here and drop it on the panel. And look at this. This is ridiculously easy. Takes a second and it pops it right in there. And there's my image. Now I'm going to go down here and I'm going to click on this little edit button. And I want to make sure my lock aspect ratio is on yes. It defaults to yes, but just make sure it's there. I'm going to select this. And now I can just drag and crop. And I can move this to wherever I want it in my image, size it however I want, and just very conveniently place it exactly where I want. And that's it. It's so easy. We're done. And there's our painting of the lighthouse. Just very cool stuff, I think. The next image that I want to work with, this is one, I'm going to move right along here. This is a shot that I took in the south of France last May, just an old farm. And it's kind of a muddy looking bland image, but I like the lines and I like these buildings back here in the old setting. So again, I'm going to start with a basic adjustment. Again, this is a raw file. start with that basic adjustment. I'm going to watch my histogram, and I'm going to take my shadows down, and I'm going to take my highlights kind of over, get this thing out of the way. And I might come down now and take my saturation up a little bit, bring out some of that color, and then I can maybe play with my exposure. I might brighten it just a little bit, because what I want to do with this, I'm going to create a look that gives us a very glowy look right here and darkens the perimeter of the image and brings this road right, leads us right to these two buildings. So I'm saturating like that. I could warm it up just a tiny bit with my slider on temperature here. You can see how it brings a little bit of that green to life. And that's it. I'm going to stop right there. That's all I'm going to do in that basic adjustment. Close that down, and then I'm going to go to, again, to my precision contrast. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to go down again and drop my saturation down, and I'm going to move my shadows, again, watching the histogram, to where it's just starting to, I guess the technical term is clip, I don't know. Then I'm going to move my mid tones over a little bit and see what happens with my highlights here. Not a lot going on with that. So I'm going to bring those maybe right in there, maybe play with the mid-tones just a little bit. So now if I go back, I'm going to tap the saturation word one time and it zeroes me back out, and here's our color. Now I can begin to adjust these micro adjustments, and now I am looking at the image and trying to bring things to life. And again, it's just a visual thing for me. And this is where I think the artistic, your artistic voice comes through, and you have the opportunity to make this look the way you want. So there's my precision contrast. The next thing I'm going to do is add the other part of that clarity component, which is the HSL color tuning. And this just blows my mind. So again, here we are at the global level where we're affecting entire saturation by dragging. But let's go in and just look at the reds. So when I hover over the red, I'm seeing red in the road and in the fence and a little bit in the building, which you don't even know is there until you do this. I'm going to click on the red, and now I'm going to take my saturation in the red up just a little bit and the lightness up a little bit. And look, I can begin to bring out some of that red in the soil and in the grass that is right in here and a little bit up in here. So I'm going to go with that, and then I'm going to go over to my golds or my oranges. Again, if I take my slider and move it all the way up, I can see where I'm affecting things. I'm going to back this down to where I'm just getting a little hint of color, and I might brighten it a little bit again. And so there we are. You can see the difference. I'm going to go to my my yellows. I'm going to do the same thing, move them all the way up so I can see what's affected. And then I'm going to back it off to a little sweet spot about right there. And then the greens, the same thing. I'm going to saturate those just a little bit, maybe brighten them a little bit. So now there's our before and after. So you can go on. We could go into these others as well and continue to fine tune this, but I'm going to stop there. You get the idea. We could also increase our detail a little bit and suppress any artifacts that come up with that. And I'm going to turn that off. So now we've got our clarity combination done. The next thing I might do with this is go down to sharpen. And again, I'm going to move this up. I'm going to raise my strength a little bit, and I'm going to sharpen this a little bit, just a little bit. So now, again, I've got my image here, and I want to add a little bit of a painterly look. So I'm going to go back to my plugins, to impression, and it's going to open up this image in impressions. And again, I'm going to go back out and choose a painterly look. And for this one, I want a really subtle look. Okay. So let's go, I want to go with this darker. There we go. This one right here, number 3. So, yeah. All right. So I like this dark vignette, and this is what I'm getting at. I want this road to bring us right up in here into this area right here, but this is way too much paint and stroke for me. So I'm going to go in and click on my sliders. I'm going to come in and I am going to drop my brush size a little bit. I'm going to back that up a little bit. I'm going to change my stroke, I think, to something less pronounced. And drop my opacity a little bit. And something like that. Again, we're going pretty quickly here, but you get the idea. So you can begin to affect your image and the stroke in this way. So the other thing you can do here, you can choose a number of strokes, and I'm going to go to a higher number of strokes, which will give this a more realistic look and less of a painterly effect. So now I'm ready to close that up, and I want to come down again to my lighting, and I want to play with this vignette. And again, we're going to drop this transition and reduce the strength. And I want to position this vignette. You can see it's way over on the wrong side, but if I grab this little dot here on the vignette, I can center it. Or actually, I think I can just double click on the center and it will jump there. So now we've got our vignette where we want it. I'm going to increase the transition so that it's softer. I mean, decrease it so that it's more subtle. And I want to make the vignette smaller. There we go. And I want to strengthen it a little bit because I really want it much darker. Come on. There we go. That's where I'm trying to get. Maybe a little more. Okay. So now I'm getting somewhat of that effect that I want. It's a little maybe dark here for what I wanted, but that's where I'm gonna stop with that. I'm gonna go ahead and close this out. And what I was going for here again was this kind of glowy effect right here that brings your eye comes right into these buildings. You've got these this gate in the front as a border and so on. So again, we're in here with our flattened image. And one of the things that I can begin to do here, if I want, I can come down to my opacity slider and I can back this off a little bit and see if it has, or actually it's, oh, you know what? It's not going to affect anything because that's a flattened image. So that's fine. So the last thing I might do to this is add a little bit of blur. I like to use a diffusion blur and increase the strength on that and add a little softness to the image. It's just gives it a little bit of mood and feel, and it just softens things just a little bit. And that's pretty much it on that one. And again, if we wanted to add our signature, we would just, I'd say I'd choose a white one. I would drag it over here and size it and position it where we want. If this is something you're interested in, I think Heath has put some information about Photo Logo out on the site. If you want to check it out, you can. They're real reasonable, and I think they do a great job.
Yeah, those are beautiful. I'm actually, to everybody who's asking, I'm going to include this in the follow-up email along with the recording and coupon codes and stuff. So keep an eye out for that. This will have all of the information for Photo Logo in it.
Okay, great. So the last, I think we're getting down to where this might be the last thing, but if not, we'll do another one. But the other thing I wanted to show you here, those of you who've been on my, have been on my webinars before know that I really love infrared photography, and I shoot with the Lumix DMC, LMX DMC point and shoot camera that has been converted by a company called Spencer Camera. They do a really nice job. They'll sell you a camera that they convert, or if you have a camera of your own, they will convert the sensor for you. And it will become a dedicated infrared camera. And they can help you with decisions about whether your camera is a good candidate for conversion to infrared. But I just have a blast with it. It's a whole different way of seeing, and I really like it. So this image is one that I shot with my little Lumix. And the first thing I'm going to do, I don't like the fact that I didn't crop this well when I shot it. I've got my subject is dead center in the frame, and I don't like it. So I'm going to start by a crop. The first thing I'm going to do is set it to original, so I don't lose my aspect ratio. And I'm going to bring this in and try to get rid of some of this junk down here. And also I've got this little speck over here in the corner. I could use my content aware and remove that, but I'm just going to crop it out and make sure I get all of it. And so now I've got my subject in a nice location in the frame. You know, kind of if you're thinking a rule of thirds, you're pretty good to go. I'm going to click done, and my horizon is fine, so I don't have to worry about that. So the first thing I'm going to do again is a basic adjustment. I'm going to come into this. I'm going to take my shadows, and again, I'm watching the histogram. I'm not even looking at the photograph. And see, here's where we started with that. And I'm going to take my shadows and watch that histogram comes all the way right up to the edge. That's where I want to go with it. Then I'll take my highlights and do the same thing on the other side. Just kind of bring it out to where it's kind of right there. Then I can begin to play with my exposure. I can either darken the exposure a little bit, which with infrared, that's kind of what I like to do. I'm always going for the really black blacks and then this beautiful white look. So I'm going to take my clarity here up too a little bit, and notice how we're starting to introduce a little bit of noise in the image, and we may take care of that in a second. So I'm going to close. That's all I'm going to do there, and I'm going to go next to the. Oops, sorry. I'm going to go and add a. Do I want to do that? Yeah. I'm just going to leave that the way it is. So. The next thing I'm going to do here, excuse me, is I'm going to sharpen this a little bit. So I'm going to go down to sharpen again. I'm going to zoom in so I can see what's going on, and I'm going to sharpen that a little bit. Maybe increase my radius, and you can see I'm adding a little bit of noise to that sky, which is not the look that I want. But I do want these areas to be really sharp. I could mask that out using the masking tool. But I'm going to save that for another day. I'm going to show you another technique, I think, well, another tool, not a technique, but another tool in Topaz that is absolutely phenomenal, and that is the noise reduction tool. And it is one of the items in the pack here. So I'm going to choose reduce noise. I'm going to just enlarge this so we can see, and I'm going to begin to move my slider over here and watch the difference already, just that little bit of difference. We have eliminated a lot of that noise in the sky, but we've still kept a lot of our clarity in the rest of the image. I'm going to do that maybe one more time. One of the areas that I haven't learned a lot about yet, I don't understand exactly how fine noise is functioning here, and I'm not going to get into it, but it is something that I intend to learn more about. And Heath, maybe you can tell us if there's a good tutorial that describes how that function or feature works. But for now, that's what I'm going to do with this one. And then the last thing that I do, and I love doing this with my infrared images, is add that diffusion blur again. It just gives it kind of a glow. And I don't know, I like that look. And probably about right there. So there's our before on that image, and there's our final. And again, that's where I would stop with that image. There's not a lot more that I would do with that. Let's see. Heath, how are we doing on time? Have time to do another one?
We have about 12 minutes left for the hour. Do you want to go ahead and blow through that? We've got a lot of questions. I don't think we're going to get to nearly all of them in the QA. But if you've got something else you're really excited about and you want to show, I'd say take it away.
Yeah, let's go back. Let's take a look at this image. Again, I just want to show you one more time what this clarity can do, this new clarity tool. So here we've got this great image of It's got lots of color in it, but it's flat and it's muddy. It's not very exciting, but it's pretty cool. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to skip the basic adjustment. I'm going to go directly into precision contrast. I'm going to do this technique that I've used where I drop my saturation and then I move my shadows and try and watch my histogram and bring it over to the left. Come on. And maybe a little bit more. Whoops, it's starting to, okay, so about right there. And then take my midtones and bring them over the other way, and my highlights the same. So now when I turn my saturation back on, there's where we are. Now I can begin to also, make these micro adjustments and start to bring this to life a little bit, but it's still, there's before and after. You can see it's still a little drab. It's not getting us where we want to go yet. So I'm going to go and grab the HSL color tuning again, and here I'm going to go to red, and I'm going to go through this really quick, so I might not be real accurate. I'm going to pop that red in those little flowers, and I'm going to brighten them. So all of a sudden, wow, look, they've come to life. I might increase my details a little bit on that and express any artifacts that I'm getting. Then I can go into my blue. I've got this beautiful wall here, and I am going to increase the saturation in that blue. Again, you want to be careful not to go too far, but it's there, and I want to try and bring it out. The next thing I want to do is bring out these oranges that are up in the, is that where they are? Yeah, okay, so then I'm going to bring those oranges up and start to bring those out of the image and so on. We can even go over to these greens and give them a little pop as well, and we can brighten them. So there's before and there's after. We've just really brought this to life. There's more we could do here, but that's kind of what I wanted to show you. Then I would take this into Topaz impression, give it a painterly look, make it very rich, and ultimately land with an image that looks something like this, where we brought out the detail in the wall and so on. So you can see it's just a much different image, a much more vibrant image. I think, I mean, I'm happy to field questions now. I mean, we've covered a lot of territory here, and if there's questions, why don't we shift to that, Heath?
Yeah, of course. The one thing I'm seeing over and over again, apart from wow and awesome and things like this is amazing, I've got to go, are people were asking a lot about masking and how that works in studio. Could you know how that works with the adjustments and then the overall mask, right? Yeah.
Yes. Let me see if I can do one here. So let's say, I'm just going to do something really dumb here. Let's take this blue and let's say we want to, well, that's not it. Let me go to a global adjustment and let me increase the saturation. And let's say I really like the saturation down here, but my sky now is way too blue. So how do I get the saturation here, but not here? Well, each of these adjustments has its own masking capability. So we're going to mask just on this tune color tuning area. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to go over here to the brush. I'm going to choose my brush size. Oops. And this is where I always get this backwards. I'm going to choose. You may have to help me here if I'm doing this wrong.
Black
so now I'm
conceals
going to go
and
in.
white reveals. So if you want to paint in black or light gray yeah, that'll work. You can do light gray as well to knock it down.
So what I'm doing is, I've got I can make this darker though by dropping this down, right? Is that what that's? Yeah. So what I'm doing is I'm masking this area of sky, and you can see how it's lightening it up. I'm not getting that deep saturation in the sky, but I am keeping it in the rest of the image where I want it. And you see the two circles, there's a red circle and a green circle. The red circle is where I'm actually painting. As long as I don't as long as I keep the red circle off of those things that I don't want to paint, um, the um, the tool will actually avoid running over the edges and protect, what's that called? I forget what that feature's called.
Edge aware.
Edge aware, thank you. And so again, I could have made my brush a little bigger here because I'm kind of going crazy filling it in all this area with the mouse. But there you go. And now you can see that, and I could have gotten in a little tighter over here on some of these areas. And that edge aware does a nice job of not, there. So now we've got our sky is not oversaturated, but we've got this really nice saturation in the foreground, if that's what we wanted to do. And masking works this way on every one of these features that you do, whether it's a basic adjustment or precision contrast or whatever. You can be very targeted about where you apply these techniques, and it's truly awesome. In addition to the brush over here, we could have actually done this as, if I reset this, I have time to do this. If I reset this, where's the reset? The other way we could have gone here is to use a gradient, and we can, come on.
You can really see that edge aware working right there in your mask preview.
Yeah, so now we've got this gradient applied, and we don't even have to do anything else. We could stretch this. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Go back. Okay, my mouse is giving me fits here. Okay, so now what I do?
The masking stacks. So if you hit undo twice,
it probably stacked.
yeah, it's stacked on top of the other. So
okay, well, anyway, you get the idea. You've got lots of different ways to do your masking, and the gradient for something like this would be perfect. You don't have to paint all that out. You just set your gradient the way we did, and it leaves this bright and the color there, and it takes it out of the top.
we're also getting a lot of people asking about Studio. Do I have to use it through Photoshop? I'll just go ahead and answer that since we're kind of low on time. Studio is a standalone application, so it works as a replacement for Photoshop or Lightroom if you like the features that it has. You don't have to have Photoshop to invoke it. You can, however, invoke it as a plugin through Studio or through Photoshop if that's your workflow. You just go to you open Photoshop, go to the filter menu, go to the Topaz Studio category, and then click Studio. You can also invoke clarity in Studio and come directly to this kind of layout that Rad has, of course, without his masking and adjustments made, by going to Filters, Topaz Studio, and then clicking Clarity. That will jump you right into Clarity in Studio with the clarity adjustments on the left, or the clarity presets on the left and your adjustments on the right. I did want to mention one more thing. If you own Topaz Clarity as a plugin, you get Topaz Clarity in Studio as a free upgrade. You don't have to buy Topaz Clarity in Studio. What happens is the email address that you own Clarity under, you sign into Studio under that account. Topaz Studio will check with the old site, make sure you own Clarity, and if it does, it will generate an order for you on the new site for $0 and unlock, as you can see here in Rad's screen, the precision contrast and HSL color tuning have blue icons. That means that they're owned. If they're black, that means that you don't own them. It will unlock all of the sliders underneath precision contrast and HSL color tuning. Basic adjustment is a free adjustment. Basically everything above vignette. Can you bring up the adjustment menu one more time? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, this one?
Yeah. Basically, everything from basic adjustment to vignette is free. Abstraction through texture are all paid adjustments. Image layer is also free. We put that down there because that's kind of our layering option. But you get for free in Studio all the masking, all the lens correction, apply all of the one-click effects, and these 10 free adjustments, basic adjustment through vignette. And then we have options for to purchase abstraction through texture. You can also get a 30-day trial on each of those independently. If you start it for abstraction, you use 30 days, then you want to try Bloom, you can click Try Pro, and it'll give you another 30 days to try Bloom. So they each have their own trials tied with them. There's a lot of information to go over Studio. If you have additional questions, please reach out to our support team. That's help@topazlabs.com. If there's anything else you have, Rad, everybody else will be getting a follow-up email with Rad's information for, is it Photo Logo, infrared converter?
Photo Logo, yeah, and Spencer's, yeah.
Cool. All
Yeah,
right.
great. Thanks a lot for having me. And by all means, if you guys have any questions, just shoot me an email or I love working with this stuff, and it's a lot of fun. So feel free.
Cool. Well, we'll have a lot more coming. We're adding new features all the time, so Rab will be excited to have you back fairly soon, I hope. Everybody else, thank you for coming as always, and we hope you have a great afternoon, evening, or morning wherever you are around the world.